Yes, it's 8 p.m. It's the last Wednesday of March. I've got my silly announcer's voice on, so it must be time for the Big Stomp. And after a month that brought us everyone asking if the Snyder Cut is any good, everyone asking what the hell an NFT is, and everyone asking if that bloody boat has moved yet, I'm joined by three towering titans of pop culture knowledge. And they are joining us from the US of A, the Ginger Sheep.
Hello.
Joining us live from a very sinister chair, Misha Sumra. No, that's the wrong person. And joining us from the wrong button clip, Lewie Kong.
Yo.
And live from the comment section, the comment section. Hello out there, Mr. Microphone. And the shots have started early. So yes, it's Wednesday. It's the Big Stomp. And joining... Oh, hello to Harriet Manga Girl. And joining us as things start, we've slowly got people coming in. Is everyone feeling excited for tonight's show?
Yes, absolutely.
Oh, yes.
Fantastic. And we shall start things off with the Ginger Sheep and Outriders.
So, Outriders. It is a third-person, team-based action game with a lot of RPG elements that got added. The way I describe it to people who aren't necessarily familiar with it is think Gears of War meets Anthem, but without some of the issues of each one. Essentially, it's set in the future. You are a group of people who have left Earth because it's no longer habitable, and you find a new planet to survive on. You're the only colony ship that's made it, and everything goes to hell. So the demo came out, officially came out at the end of February, but the information that I'm going to talk about came out in March. And they released some demographic information and some information about the play that was pretty interesting. I'll go over a couple things and then we'll talk about it. But over 2 million players in the first week joined it. 3.6 trillion total damage dealt by players during the time that they were tracking that information. And the one statistic I find interesting, the most hours invested by one player at this point was 254 hours. The demo length is only about 4.5 hours. So this guy invested a lot of time. I talked to a couple people about it and come to find out he was on break from school and was farming legendaries, and so he had nothing else to do. So he just kept playing over and over and over.
I spent 100 hours playing Cyberpunk 2077 to finish, as in, like, there's 2 achievements I've got left, and this guy's played twice as many hours on a demo.
On a demo, it's only like 4 hours, 4.5 hours. Yeah,
I played it. I played it today.
I mean, at max, that's what? How many? 250 hours.
254.
So that's well over 50 hours per character class.
Yeah, I mean, and that's. I don't know if he played across multiple classes or what, because in the demo you reach a certain point where you would progress in the storyline, and it just stops there, and it says, "Hey, this is the demo. This is it." And then there's a few quests that you can go repeat, but like world enemies don't respawn in this part. So there's like 2 or 3 repeatable quests, and that's it. So he just literally just kept repeating those quests over and over, or like played other classes. I'm not sure. I mean, I'm not sure how he got away with it.
I mean, I kind of get it because I kind of get it because I did the same with Destiny, with the first Destiny when that demo came out. But I was playing different characters and different classes with different people. So like I'd play through the demo with a group of 2 or 3 people, and then I'd delete that character and start a new character with a different group of people. So I kind of get it, but then you sort of run the risk of being burnt out on the full game when that comes out. So.
But one of the things I noticed about Outriders is the way the world level works. if you play for the idea that if you play for a certain amount of time, you're basically unlocking harder difficulty levels. So presumably, what the Mr. 250 Hours was doing was he got to the top level and was just farming that one boss, Gauss, I think his name is, over and over again for the best drops.
Yeah, I mean, and that's definitely a possibility. Yeah, because your chance of higher level loot goes up as the world level goes up. So yeah, it just imagine doing one small area with, I think at most, not including the boss, maybe a dozen and a half enemies to fight. I mean, you can get quick, you can repeat really fast, but that's going to get tedious.
It is worth mentioning that one of the features of the demo is that you can continue. You do make a Square Enix account with it, which will log your progress, and your progress will carry on to the full game. So this is essentially, they have released the tutorial, they have released the first mission and tutorial set as the demo. So there is some some benefit from it, but I don't know about 200 hours.
Well, that was the one thing I was going to ask, and I was talking to a couple friends about this the other day. When I've thought about it, I can only think of maybe 2 or 3 games ever where they did that, where your progress in the demo translated into the live game. Usually it's you do the demo and then you start the live game fresh. Nothing transfers over. And I think there's like 2 or 3 games that I can think of that actually had that.
I can't think of any off the top of my head. The Division, maybe?
Nope. I looked it up, and there were 2 or 3, and none of them were games that I had played that I could think of. But yeah, that was the one really big, interesting selling feature to me, was the idea that I'm making progress in this demo, and then I don't have to start over fresh when I go into the live game. I can, if I want to, I can delete that character and start over and use what I've learned from the demo to redo things.
The only thing I can think of that's comparable is a large number of MMOs will let you play intro levels and intro characters for free.
Yeah.
And then when you decide to upgrade, they'll give you the full package. Like I think Blizzard at the moment, if you have bought any of the of the World of Warcraft products, they will let you play everything except the two most recent products. They will let you play them for free.
So you actually don't need to own any of the previous WoW expansions to do that. So even if you're a new player,
okay.
you can. There's the starter edition, which lets you play up to like a certain level, I think you're limited in some of the classes and stuff like that, but and some features.
Yeah.
But yeah, you can kind of play it to try it out, and then if you buy the full game, that character will then transition into the full game.
Yeah, but the only thing I can think of as comparable is a number of MMOs have that kind of setup. A quick comment from Redhead's Ramblings. I'm not sure how I feel about that, because what if stuff from the demo gets patched out because it's broken? Presumably, it would just be patched along with it.
I suppose it depends on how Square Enix and People Can't Fly want to handle it. So, for example, Fallout 76...
They're already rebalancing, aren't they?
Mm.
They are already rebalancing the thing.
Yeah.
The patches coming out with... they're pre-patching the demo, which is pretty good going, if I'm honest.
Yeah, they already did one patch for the demo, but I'm curious. Louis, you were talking about Fallout 76.
So Fallout 76, for instance, they, because of the way that the weapon abilities work, they patched out certain combinations because they were just too overpowered for the game. But the original weapons that came from that came from release, essentially, they left them in the game, and they either slightly patched the stats or they just left it in the game, full stop. So you can then run around with this, what they call in 76 legacy weapon, which does ridiculous damage, and it is just crazy to see in the game. So, I mean, like I say, it depends on how Square Enix does it. Like, they might want to take it out of the game, take those broken items out of the game, or they might want to just leave them in and patch it out for future weapons. But then this Outriders works slightly differently. So
yeah, I mean, and that's the thing I'm curious about, because I mean, you know, that's essentially grandfathering in the old weapons that don't fit into the new format. And I've seen a couple of games do that, but usually it's, you know, it's like very minor things. I don't imagine that, like, if they're going to change weapons, like how they do damage or their fire rates or things like that, it's likely they're just going to patch the weapons overall. So if the weapon already exists in your inventory, if you've already used it, the patch will retroactively apply to that weapon, and going forward. But the other potential option, and I don't think they will do this, just because it will likely, especially if you find something that's unique or something, is just flat out replace the weapon, give them like scrap or titanium or something equivalent to it, or give them a weapon that's comparable in the new scheme of things. But likely they would just patch the weapons themselves, which, yes, for some people, if they're used to a weapon being like significantly overpowered and then it gets patched and it's not as useful, that's unfortunate. But that's also how games as a service like this works. That happens in every MMO, that happens in, you know, in shooters. When they balance things, it, you know, changes. You deal with it.
This is very much a piece of their marketing. This is a very solid promotional push tool. So I imagine they'll keep it as good as they can. One thing I have seen, I witnessed from playing it and from reading around that, is after a lot of recent debacles about big ass AAA games being launched and being unplayable until 4 months after launch. Completely incidentally, Cyberpunk 2077 just did a massive update.
If you're lucky, it might be playable by that point in 2077.
No, it will now be. It is. Cyberpunk 2077 is now playable at the level it should have been at launch. But the conversation going around it is, wow, I can totally try out this game on my computer. I can see if it works. And that, to me, is an amazing, that's a wonderful thing to do.
And that's the hard part for me, is I was excited for that game for a very long time. I pre-ordered it. Like I was talking about it constantly. I have played about 5 hours of it because it crashes on me. It is randomly crashing. I have a $3,000 gaming computer. I have a RTX 3080. I have a i9 10850K. I have 32 gigs of RAM. Like, I have a computer that's well beyond the specs for it, and I cannot play that game because it crashes on me.
Wow!
It crashes at random times, and I cannot figure out why. I haven't played it recently, but this was like the first week of launch. Like the first day, it crashed 4 times, and it was at various points. And
so this is also acting, therefore, as a beta test for it, because they're going to have been taking that crash data.
Yeah, I mean, I've submitted crash data. I've reached out to people on the dev team or people that work for, you know, CD Projekt Red. You know, I'm a game development student, and I interact with a lot of people online in the game development community. Like a lot of people.
So sorry, are you talking about Cyberpunk or Outriders?
Cyberpunk, right?
Yeah. No, that was just a beta play from the start.
Yeah. So, yeah. No, I mean, I could go on that for a long time.
Yeah. But with regards to Outriders, they have to counter that point. Outriders has got a month of beta testing.
Yes. Oh,
so
absolutely.
yeah.
I think they released a major patch just a week or two ago.
I think one of the big things
of what Cyberpunk did, isn't it? No, sorry, carry on.
Absolutely. Sorry. I think there might be a bit of a delay there because it seems like we're talking over each other a little bit. what I was going to say was, I think one of the major things for Outriders is the fact that it's going straight to Game Pass on release, which I think is tomorrow.
Yes,
Looks
tomorrow.
like
it's gonna be
Midnight
free.
for everybody but the US. US, it's 9 a.m. tomorrow.
And it's going to be free on Game Pass.
Yeah, which I don't know. I know it's the console version. I don't know if it's on the PC version as well.
check.
But I mean, that's crazy, because I know it's not marketing itself as a Destiny killer, but it's sort of looking like it might be trying to go that way. And I don't know,
I
But
actually read an article on Forbes, of all places, that was talking about, this might, there's basically the summary of the article was, there are lots of games that have, purported themselves to be the game, like, your Anthems, your Destiny, whatever, but this one might actually be, and this is like serious high-powered business magazine. Oh, yeah.
Forbes
Yeah.
is worth reading because they do very analytical market-based stuff on video gaming. I regularly read Forbes for that kind of stuff, but I can kind of see it trying to be the Destiny killer, but it has repeatedly said it's going to be a finishable game. There is a start, there is a plot, there is an end. It's not going to be a game as service release. It's going to be a game. Yes, you can co-op it. Yes, you could probably have great fun multi-end game, multiplaying it and then grinding away to get your levels up. But there is also just a story you can do.
And that's definitely it.
And yet I can still see it being the Destiny killer, even though Destiny's had 2 cracks at it.
I'll be sorry. Go on.
Sorry.
You this time.
Yeah, sorry. Okay, because what was I going to say? It was about the. Sorry, what? Sorry, Raggedy. What were you saying earlier? I think it was just a moment ago. I lost my train of thought.
The
Destiny
killer.
Yeah.
It could be, and that it could become a go-to shooter MMO, even though it's not an MMO.
But what does occur to me is that it's okay. It is a third-person science fiction shooter with a fairly heavy cover-based mechanic. Set far, far away in a galaxy, another galaxy, whatever. Basically, is it not like it's going to get the Andromeda vote, isn't it? It's until all the Mass Effect fans are going to major on that until, at the very least, until Legendary Trilogy comes out.
Yeah, when I was playing it, I was thinking of Mass Effect. We may have dissension from the audience.
So, see, I have to admit, when I played it,
hey, I love Mass Effect. I love Mass Effect.
I sort of found that it was more akin to games like The Division, with the cover-based and the tactical movement between cover. And then you had Destiny, which, I'm sorry, but the menu and the inventory system might as well have been ripped straight out of Destiny. I'm sure it's going to be a brilliant game, but for me, there are other games out there that do the same thing, but better. Like, if I want to play a cover-based shooter, then I'll play The Division, or The Division 2, rather. If I want to play a science fiction shooter, then I'll play Destiny. Well, maybe not, but I don't know. It just felt like it was. This is based purely on one playthrough of the demo. It felt like it was trying to take a lot of influences from other games of a similar genre, and I just kind of found myself thinking, actually, do you know what, such and such game did this bit better, or such and such game did this bit better. So
that's the thing, though. Sorry, I'm just picking up on when you said this is just from one playthrough of the demo. That's what the demo's there. to do. If you play through it, especially when they gave so much away, you can totally. I think if you're getting all of that off that game, that's a fair call. That's how you would feel about it.
Mm.
It's not like, I can't remember when something that wasn't a as a service open-ended MMO game, which this claims it isn't. I can't remember the last time someone gave us this much of a taste of a game on this scale. It's you could totally get from running through it. I totally got a feel of what the game was about and whether I should punt the 50 quid or not. You got to read off this game. You're not gambling 50 quid off a couple of reviews, some screenshots, a dev diary, and some videos, which we've been doing for ages. Yes.
I have to admit, I don't need to gamble 50 quid because I've got Xbox Game Pass. So
fair enough.
I could plow 20, 30 hours into it and be like, yep, that's me done. And then be done. So
I generally agree with Lewie, but I also kind of disagree. So one of the things that I feel strongly about is this whole concept of this is an X killer or this is a Y killer is something that I just never agreed with. Like, you know, people talk about an MMO coming out and like, oh, this is a WoW killer, or some game come out and this is a Destiny killer. I don't agree with that. I've never got on board with that concept. But beside that point, Louie's right in that, you know, you play the game and you see stuff and you go, yeah, this other game did this part this style of thing better, or this other game did this style of thing better. But the thing I like about it is, yes, there are games that do stuff better. Like the cover-based system in it is better in Division or better in Gears of War. Absolutely. But it's done well enough that it doesn't feel like it's a detriment to me. The inventory system is very Destiny-like. Yes, Destiny's does it better, but it's done well enough combined with the other stuff to make it interesting enough to continue. I will get rid of my point in a second, and then I will.
No, carry on.
So my other thing with it is, that like for me, I played the game for an hour and then bought it. I never even finished the demo before I bought it. But for me, like the big thing for me is I am not a multiplayer person. I used to be. I used to compete, play games competitively. This was before people really got paid for it. This was back in the 90s in, Team Fortress Classic and early Counter-Strike. So I am a solo player. And the fact that the game feels balanced enough that I can play solo without feeling like I have to spend 40 or 50 or 60 hours grinding items like I do in Destiny is what appeals to me big time. Yes, it's going to be a challenge, but it's something that I feel like I get enough out of it to make it worth it, especially as somebody who became disenfranchised with the grind in Destiny, or disenfranchised with the idea that to progress in Division 2 after you get to a point, you have to have other people to really progress.
Yeah, Lewie, and then a question from the audience.
I totally agree with both the points about the Division 2 and Destiny 2, because much like yourself, I'm a solo player. Like I would much rather play, like I played through the whole Destiny 2 campaign on my own. Same with the Division. I can't remember what my original point was that I was interrupting for. But yes, I agree with those sentiments.
Okay, cool. Here we go. So this is from Make Fun Making It. Does Outrider have anything new, or is it just a rehash of what's out there? Are they trading on the fact that people will play because they're bored with the established titles? Let's go around in a circle on this. Let's start off in the top right with Ginger Sheep. How do you feel about that question?
I wouldn't say that there's anything new that I felt, but I will say that it does improve on some things that have been done in other games, and at the same time does things that aren't as good as other games, like we talked about. Well, like I said, I don't think it does anything new, but I think it combines enough aspects from other games or similar elements to make it, worth playing for somebody who might like those aspects.
Okay. And he says, looking for his pronunciation guide. And Misha, your feelings on that? Anything new? Just a rehash? Especially, do you think they're trading on people being bored with established titles?
I mean, any time you've got a new IP from a AAA tier, there's always going to be a certain level of interest. The question then is whether you can back up the interest with a good game, a working game, preferably both. In Cyberpunk, well, for me, what I found quite interesting was in terms of play styles. The different characters are very different, and each character almost plays like it's from a different game. And you got the techie guy. He lobs the drones and snipes from far away. I mean that did kind of give me a little bit of a TF2 vibe. Whereas the Devastator, which is my class of choice, apologies for this, Redhead's ramblings, but it's straight up Vanguard. You just go charging in, shields up, bash into everything, just hose everything in front of you with an assault rifle or a shotgun, then jump in the air and basically do the thing from Fantastic Four. Boom. Just
Louis.
Yeah, the play style is absolutely classic Vanguard.
Louis, any thoughts on that question? I'll bung it up there just so you've got it.
Do you know what? I sort of came into this with the intention of I'm going to rag on Outriders something chronic because I really didn't like playing the demo. But actually, do you know what? No, it doesn't do anything new. And yes, it is a bit of a rehash. And they might be trading on the fact that people will play something new and more to them. Like, if that works, then go for it. I'll probably end up plowing a few hours into it. I'll install it tomorrow or later on. And I'll give it a go. Because chances are I'll end up playing it with someone else and it'll be a somewhat mediocre game that I'll play with other people. I mean, not to harp on about Fallout 76, but I plowed an ungodly number of hours into Fallout 76, not because it's a good game, but because I've played it with other people. So, yeah, I don't think, no, it's not doing anything new, but like Ginger Sheep said, it's improving on things that have already been done, which, to be honest, is what a new game should be doing.
I will just add one more thing.
Go for it.
In terms of Square Enix, co-op multiplayer, third-person games, it definitely gets the taste of Avengers out of everyone's mouths.
Yeah.
I mean, although it took a lot of mouthwash, but it did.
If anyone from the Peanut Gallery has anything else they want to throw on this one, any questions, any comments, please rack them up. While waiting for them to come through, does anybody here remember Global Agenda?
Global Agenda.
That sounds like a conspiracy theory.
No, okay. Well, that was a MMO FPS that really reminded me of this game. That was playable solo, but also in a group. And yeah, when I was going through it, I was very definitely feeling, wow, this would be so much fun to play with a fire team. And I was also very impressed with how the people dodging from when I was playing the sniper, like the enemy, if I carried on taking shots at them, the person I was shooting at would just keep his head down.
Yeah.
They've actually got quite a smart AI in there, so it would be a lot quicker, not just because we've got more ammo going downhill, but because we'd be able to do the combined tactics if I had other people with different classes on there. So
Yeah,
none of you guys play Global Agenda, so sucks to be me.
Oh, that's something I wanted.
Speaking of fire teams, I do.
Go ahead.
No, carry on.
You were starting first.
But I mean, from what I've read, I haven't done a lot of multiplayer in Outriders, but the other players do generally. The buzz, such as it is that the other players are actually quite friendly, and it is it is quite a welcoming community for for newbies and for that kind of thing.
Yeah,
PvE tends to have a bit of that edge. I don't know why, but PvE does.
It's I agree. I was going to say yes. The PvE, like if there isn't PvP, you don't attract the necessarily as many of the toxic assholes. But the two things that I wanted to talk about real fast, and then I will stop, is what Raggedy was saying is I think this game, and Lewie touched on it too. I think this game is, for a lot of people, is really going to be something that you want to play with other people because it's going to make it more interesting and fun. And Misha mentioned that too. Like, if you have a good team and you have all 4 classes and you work together, I think it could be really fun and interesting for a lot of people. And so that whole fire team mechanic, I think, is something that is going to appeal to people, especially in a PvE environment that is going to draw people in. I'm trying to remember the other thing. All of a sudden, I blanked it. Braggy, what was the other thing? What were you talking about before? You were talking about the fire teams and the AI. Yes, so the AI is fantastic. Like, I had the exact same experience where, like, if I was sniping, which I did a lot as the Devastator because I decided to play the class completely wrong a lot and fight from far because that's what I like to do. But yes, the AI, like, if I was sniping, the enemies would keep their heads down and I'd have to move to reposition, or I'd have to do something else to get them to pop up. So the AI was really interesting about that. Like, if I went to attack somebody, like, other people would gang up on me. It was done really, really well. It was frustrating at times. But sometimes that's
frustrating.
Yeah. Like, it's I'm not a person that usually looks for challenge when I play games. Like, I'll usually play them on easy or normal difficulty because I want to just play a game and escape and and explore a story and lore and stuff like that. But I liked that the challenge that was there was nothing that was extreme, but it made me think about what I had to do and how I was going to do it in a way that did not make it unfun for me.
You have to play it more tactically rather than just a generic Gears of War shooter and just running in guns are blazing or
exactly, like, and that's
chainsaws are blazing.
Yeah, like, and that was like Division 2, like, definitely had some of that where, like, I could stand way back and snipe everybody. I could not be tactical and run in if I got enough armor, but I also had to be very careful about how I did that. With this, it gets that same kind of feeling where, like, I could be a Devastator and I could run in and I could beat the hell out of everything and usually survive pretty well if I'm being smart about it. Or I could stay back as the Technomancer, which to me, the Technomancer really feels like a Division agent with their tech and stuff like that. Like, that's what it felt like to me. But yeah, it's one of those things where I have different options to play, and as a solo player, I can explore all of them. But if I want to really get more out of the game, I can join with other people, which I might actually do. Which is, like I said, it's not something I generally want to do, but that's my thing. I think it's something that is going to work really well.
One final observation related to that. Gaming as a social mechanism is a powerful reason to game. Yes, I think the social element of it is definitely tucking in. Final question before we go on. Regardless of your feelings towards the actual game, for me personally anyway, how do you guys reckon? Do you reckon this is like a a benchmark of a demo of what a good game demo would be is now? Or do you think it's just, right. Especially considering the mechanic where your progress continues to the full thing and the amount they have shown in the demo, so you can actually have a good time just playing the demo. And, because it is, yeah. Any opinions on that?
I do, but Louis looked like he really wanted to say something, so I'll let him go first.
To be totally honest, I thought it was a bit of a meh demo, but that's based on playing like the Division beta, playing the Destiny beta, the Destiny 2 beta, not so much the Division 2 beta, because that just felt balls hard. But the only thing that I like really about it is, two things that I like about the demo is, one, your progress carries over, which is brilliant, and two, you can skip that super boring bit at the beginning, which is like half an hour of like playing a generic, go talk to this person, go. I'm like, dude, I don't care about your sob story. I want to go and shoot some people.
Daka.
And I want to get some badass superpowers. Like, less chat, more radiation. But then you can skip that for subsequent classes, which is good.
And Misha.
Yeah, I mean, as
a demo,
I would. As a demo, I'd say it's. I great. The gameplay itself is sort of good to great. I probably won't be buying it myself because I fear how much time I might lose into it. Quite frankly, much the same logic as why I never got a WoW subscription. I literally do not have the hours. I don't have the hours to lose.
I feel personally attacked by that comment. As a demo,
as a demo and as a concept and as a way of doing what it's doing, I think it's fantastic. I mean, I vividly remember back many years ago, we had when we got our first PC at a Cyrix 686-233 or something. And one of the things we got with it was a demo of the original Diablo. Now, it was only the first two floors of the dungeon, but I kept on playing it because, I just kept on playing those first two, grinding them over and over again, and that gave me very much of an idea of what the game was, more than any other. More than any number of, especially when you've got these days, it's all people doing let's plays for their reviews, and everything gets embargoed. And like with Cyberpunk, where they were only allowed to do certain bits and bobs, there's nowhere to hide when you're putting out what's basically what's more or less the mechanically is the full game. And you've got to respect that in terms of breaking the mold of what modern game promotion has become. Back in the day, demos were you'd cover discs. Whatever happened to cover discs? This is back to the days of cover discs and is better for it.
Yeah, I was going to say I'll give my thought real quick and then we can move on.
To the next one. Yeah.
I agree. Like it's irrespective of my feelings about the game, what they did with the demo, the option or the ability to take your progress forward into the live game, the fact that you really legitimately get a feel for the way the game plays. You're doing the entire prologue of the game, not some little sectioned off area that doesn't exist in the live game. Like, this is something that you really get a feel for. I think it's a fantastic idea. I would love to see more people do this, more companies do this. it does. It reminds me of back in the day where you'd get a game magazine and there'd be a disc in the back, or you'd go by your local game store and they had a little disc that had, several demos on it. Like I remember those days, and this like harkens back to those days. And on a tangent to that, Misha's right that, this is something that really can suck people in. As a very long time WoW player, I resemble that remark of losing many. I don't even want to think about how many actual days of playtime I have, but it's in the hundreds probably.
I saw mine recently, and it was worrying.
Yeah.
It was truly worrying.
Yeah. So,
Run away, Lewie. Run away.
How many hours are you at, Andy?
I'm not going to discuss that in public.
Okay.
You said you needed a pee break. Go away.
I do.
But yeah, no, it's I definitely agree. Like I want more companies to do stuff like this. And what Misha said about like the people, like a lot of these days, like you see other people playing it. You read, like an embargoed review of somebody playing an earlier version of the game 3 months ago, or it's right before release date, and then all of a sudden you can get information about it. Nothing compares to getting hands-on with as close to the final product as you can to really get a feel for it. And I think it's something more games need to do. Like I've done countless betas over the years, and for big companies and small, and I've enjoyed them, but nothing compares to actually playing something that feels like it's close to complete.
But a lot of betas are for MMOs.
Yes, but I played.
And this is not an MMO.
Yeah,
that's the thing. This is a regular solo, possibly multiplayer game. It's like it's like being given the first 4 hours of Borderlands 3.
Yes, yeah. I mean, I've done like Diablo betas. I've done like StarCraft beta. Like I've done like various other things. I betaed multiplayer of ODST on the Xbox. And things like that. Like I've done all that stuff, but none of them really gave me a feel for the game quite as well as this did.
Fantastic. Yeah. Okay. And we are now going to move on to our next subject.
Yes.
Are you ready to take us through this? I'm not going to say sad, but
it's perhaps slightly melancholy.
Melancholy is a good word. Word for it.
Yeah. Well, yes. This month marked the 6 years since we sadly lost Sir Terry Pratchett to Alzheimer's, or what he referred to as his great embuggerance. Some argue that he's the greatest fiction writer of the modern era and one of the greatest of all time. I'd love to say that you don't sell 80 million books without being a fantastic writer, but both Stephanie Meyer and E.L. James have sold 100 million plus. But there's a difference between selling 200 million generic airport novels off the back of a massive marketing campaign. Oh, excuse me, Mr. Brown, I didn't see you over there with all the shade I'm casting. But repeatedly topping the bestseller lists with books from a genre that is still derided as somehow inferior. His books have entertained, inspired, challenged, and helped people all over the world. I'm not here to mock people for liking what they like, but if you told me that reading 50 Shades of Grey had helped you through an existential crisis, I would probably have a follow-up question or two. Or I might just step away. But I mean, really, for me, what makes Sir Terry's work great is it's not even what he wrote; it's the way he wrote it. He has a greater value to contemporary cultural discourse as a philosopher than he does as a fiction writer. You look at it. He's obviously, he started early days. Color of Magic, like Fantastic, is just straight up fantasy pastiche. Then you get to Mort and like Equal Rights, and you start to see the more sort of observational the skewering of people's notions, and then it's ramping all the way up to what I consider to be his great purple patch of around sort of Jingo into Thief of Time, Hogfather, and Night's Watch, particularly. And then later on he gets, to my mind, a little bit less humorous, a lot darker, a bit more serious. Some things like Monstrous Regiment. I bounced off a little bit, but that was just the way he was doing. But all the way through, what you see is his unerring ability to just look at people, see what makes them tick, and put that across in a way that that people don't realize. You don't realize until you've gotten to the end of that little aside. Oh, right, that's what he was saying. His skill, because he's such a good writer, his skill is, it's not just in having the philosophy, but taking all these ideas and synthesizing them, putting them together, presenting them in a way that is imminent, that is infinitely accessible. Whether that's the power of the story, as not just as a narrative, but as like a force in and of itself. The repeated motif of humanity being somehow infectious. You have these, the entire concept of anthropomorphic personifications. Death is a skeleton because that's not because he's a skeleton, but because that's what people think he should be. And so, the whole thing of form, function, consensus, reality, which is particularly relevant these days when people can very easily live in partisan information bubbles. Yeah, I mean, I could go on. You could talk about individual characters. I'm hoping that the Peanut Gallery will bundle in on Granny Weatherwax, because I am not remotely qualified to talk about how great she is. But I believe there are people in the gallery who would have
pretty darn cool character. I mean, he was the
Sam Vines and all the watch.
Yeah, he was the number one best-selling fiction author for a decade. You do not be that high within that many people's minds and not have some kind of long-standing impact. It's go for it.
So, I have a confession to make. Well, two. I read a lot, like an absurd amount. 2018, I read 160 books that were all new to me. 2019 was 192, and 2020 was 205.75. Every single year, those were all brand new books to me. So I read a lot.
That is ridiculous.
Yes,
well
this year I'm on track to break 208. So I read an obscene amount of books. I have read one book by Terry Pratchett, not because I have anything against his writing. His inspiration is everywhere. He deserves all the credit that he is due. I have read a single book by Terry Pratchett, which is Good Omens, and of course that's Terry Pratchett and Neil Gaiman. But
Good Omens is I could talk for ages just on Good Omens.
Well, and one of the reasons that I enjoyed that one was because I am a big fan of Douglas Adams, and there are aspects of Good Omens that kind of give me feelings and elements that kind of harken back to the way Adams wrote. And what I hear that is not uncommon in Terry's work. Like, while he's not trying to emulate him, there are aspects of the way he writes and the way he does things that kind of give that same kind of feeling of making you think things and making you perceive things differently and things like that. I've been meaning to go back to reading his... Go ahead.
I mean, just in some of his sort of early to mid works, you have footnotes, which are basically for Terry. They're the equivalent of Adams's guide, asides from the guide. At one point, it was like a thing where you almost got more footnote on page than you did actual page. And I think in Pyramids, I think it was at one point the footnotes had footnotes. It was part of it was just part of like the way he did it, the way he did his thing. That fell off when he got to his what I thought was his really good patch. Yeah, sorry, carry on.
No, I was gonna, like Douglas Adams, he was also seriously into world building. I mean, he did. It's not just that he did 41 books within the disc world. It's the fact that the disc world became its own thing almost. It's started out, as you said, as a parody, and it then became a satirical world for us to look into the mirror on. It was definitely a feat. Louis, you were going to say?
I have zero experience of Terry Pratchett other than Good Omens, and the only reason I read that was because I'm a big Neil Gaiman fan. So, I mean, some of the televised stuff, like The Hogfather, I thoroughly enjoyed, but maybe not enough to make me want to actually read it. Like, I've got a few of his books that I do need to read, but yeah, unfortunately, I'm not sure I'm going to be able to add much to this conversation.
I mean, on the point about the adaptations, Hogfather is I still think that Hogfather is the best of the adaptations, but
okay,
it's unfortunate that compared to Light Fantastic and Color of Magic, which were and then there were the ones with Moist von Lipwig making money, and the other one Going Postal.
Going Postal.
I thought, yeah, they were all Sky, but Hogfather was a great one because it got to, there was a lot of the stuff, the really like deep person observations on humanity stuff in there. Unfortunately, because of the nature of a televised product, you can't get all the details. You know, you can't drill down into not just, you know, what he's saying, but why. You know, all the stuff about, you know, the fact that people need, you know, they need stories to be human. The place where the falling angel meets the rising ape. Because it's all of that, and they touch on how belief works in the disc world, but if you read the book, and particularly if you've read a couple of the books before, some of the other books beforehand, it makes so much more sense within the context.
I think even if I find it interesting that you guys are like, oh, I've never read Pratchett, but you're name checking stuff that he influenced, like Neil Gaiman himself said that he was heavily influenced by Pratchett.
Oh yeah.
So it's I don't going back to Mr. earlier thesis. Is I don't think not having read Pratchett at this point isn't that big an issue, because it's already, you know, he's already poisoned the well, as it were. He's already his ideas are so abundant, and his also his ability to change as an author has become quite accepted, especially if you look at again, going on to Gaiman's work. We're talking about someone who went from straight up parody, because about the first 3 or 4 books were just ripping the piss out of fantasy. No grand commentary, straight up ripping the piss. He then moved into satire and became and I think that was where the longevity of the books came, because and the popularity of it came, because there's still unfortunately a number of the books, if you read now, it's got that current vibrancy to it, which is always really annoying. when a bit of satire still, 20 years ago, this joke was made and it still lands because the same things suck. Bloody hell. And then you move on to his later works, and it was straight up social commentary. He was using that vehicle to move on. So there are a lot of things, his weight has been established. And again, there's no way, if you're reading a contemporary writer in any kind of fantasy setting, either they will have grown up reading Pratchett because writers read a hell of a lot, or they will have read someone who has read a lot of Pratchett. That's it. It's that immediate and that likely.
Yeah.
So,
and the other thing, of course, is that you don't have to have read Pratchett to be able to spot something fantastical about what is fantastic in what you mean. It's like the Samuel Vimes Boots theory of economic unfairness that regularly bounces around any and all form of social media. About, it just drills right down to how being poor is incredibly expensive.
There's a comment from just Mark I'd like to read out. To be fair, people can reference Tolkien without having experienced his work because it's so permeated the culture. I'm going to suggest, same with Pratchett.
Yeah,
I agree.
so
absolutely. Like, two authors that I have read that I've enjoyed, and I feel that they definitely have had some inspiration from Pratchett. One is Simon R. Green and his Nightside series, which is a very interesting series. Basically, the Nightside is this kind of place that's this in-between place that collects things from everywhere. There's aliens, there's angels, there's demons, there's fantasy characters. There's just all kinds of stuff. It's this kind of this place that kind of collects everything. But the other one, who's also a very prolific author, but it never really got the same notoriety as Pratchett, is Piers Anthony. Mostly because he's pretty much stuck to the same kind of books he's always done. His Xanth series is in like 37 or almost even 40 books now, or at least planned. One of the downsides to him is that puns are a very, very integral part of all of his writing.
Yeah.
What else was it?
It is a pune or play on words.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What?
We're gonna start that now.
Oh, I know. Less of that.
But like, you're right that, like, you can be familiar with the influences of Pratchett without having read his stuff, because enough people have read his stuff that are making stuff that influences from him have bled through. Like, that's very, very true. Like, I can read Gaiman stuff and tell where influences from Pratchett have come from. When I read Good Omens, like, you could tell who was writing which section, or stuff like that. But you could also tell that, like, they were influenced by other stuff. Like I mentioned, it felt like there were parts that were very influenced by Adams, and things like that. So yeah, I very much intend to go around and read Pratchett stuff, because, like, the Discworld series does interest me. I just haven't gotten around to it because I've built such a collection of things that I need to read through. But it's one of those things where, like, their influence is so prolific that you can't experience something that's tangentially related without some sort of connection to them. It's the same with Tolkien and many other people.
Lewie, you were going to say?
I think it's easy enough for us to say, like, oh, we've never read Pratchett. But actually, those of us, myself and Ginger Sheep, who have said, oh, we've never read Pratchett, apart from... like,
the Pratchett you've read, yeah.
So actually, we have read Pratchett. That was my only point.
No,
I mean, but it's not. But
it's a fair point because you're like, I've never done
Pratchett.
Pratchett other than this book and this series, and that is just yeah.
So, you're saying about
like,
his influences in other things. Well, yeah, but also his influence on the things that he's actually not produced, but like stuff like the Hogfather, the Color of Magic, Going Postal, and Good Omens, which I think are probably the 4 or 5 that I've actually enjoyed.
It's interesting to me, going back to the Douglas Adams thing, that his works, how can I put it? There have been numerous attempts at adapting his works for the screen that have been of questionable success during his life. In that, the guy basically writes stuff that can't, quote unquote, can't be adapted. And then after his death, stuff comes out that is really, really, in both cases, just riffing off the main ideas. The Dirk Gentry series I absolutely loved, but it was not Dirk Gently. And for fear of mentioning it, because it's already flying around on the Peanut Gallery, the upcoming Watch series, which I'm sure will be very good, but I do not know how. I have very strong opinions about how close to Mr. Pratchett's work it will be. So that's another interest.
So just
that's the one that's already out, isn't it? All episodes, BBC America.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah, the BBC America one with the controversial casting, that's out.
Oh, okay. I didn't realise it was out. I thought it was later this year. Yeah. Okay.
So a slight tangent about The Watch is it has a very definite BBC feel to it. So it looks like Doctor Who, Torchwood, those kind of BBC productions, which I think is probably one of the main issues with it, other than the fact that apparently it's nothing like The Watch, the book. So
yeah,
that was my point.
There's something to say about that, but I don't know how spoiler. This comes with a massive spoiler warning, so
let's not.
Yeah.
So that's the one thing. Like, so for me, like, being as prolific of a reader as I am, it was years ago that I finally had to sit down with myself and really consider it. And it's something that works for me. It doesn't work for everybody. I have to absolutely separate source material from adaptations. They are not the same thing. This is an adaptation. This is based off of. This is not the source material. I understand people's desire to have something as close to the source material as possible. And generally, I'd love to see that as well. But they are not the same thing. And people get upset when they remake something or when they adapt something and they change it. It does not affect the source material at all. It should not affect your perception of the source material at all. Like Game of Thrones, there were aspects of it that were fantastic and spot on with the books. And there was a lot that was different. And that's even with, George R.R. Martin being an executive producer on the show. Yes, he had limited say, but you have to understand they are not the same thing. So yes, this Watch series is probably going to be different than, the books, especially with it being on BBC and them having specific things that they can't do. It's it's the same with Game of Thrones. It's the same with anything. You have to separate and appreciate it for what it is, not what it's based on.
Oh yeah, you could say that. Hitchhikers is very much the classic example of that. I mean, you've got the books, and you've got the TV series, and you've got the radio plays, and you've got the film, and it's accepted that they are just different universes. They are basically parallel universes to each other. And there's in some cases you actually have arguments about which is the true canon.
Douglas Adams kind of cheated on that one, in that he went down on record as saying they are all the true version of the story and they're all the same version of the story. So anyone who goes, well, that's not canon, it's just like, Yeah, it is. He said it was. And if you can't get your head around that, don't read The Hitchhikers, which I think was a lovely thing. No, I absolutely salute you, Ginger Sheep, for your comment on that. Too many people get, as someone who's a huge Dune nerd and has watched people. I don't know. I think they're worried that the adaptation police will come in the middle of the night, steal their books, and wipe their memories because, oh my lord, one of the characters is now a lady. Yeah, it's.
Which I'm looking forward to the new series, by the way.
I'm really looking forward to it, and the way I've been describing it is I'm looking forward to one of the most spectacular failures to get the book right, and I don't mean that in an aggressive way. I just mean that I really can't see how you can do the book because of the various elements within the book.
Yeah.
But I can still go and bloody well enjoy it. And with the watch, I think it will probably be really fun. It could very well be an enjoyable thing to watch. I just don't think it is the watch. And that was my point. I love the Dick Gently series that they did for the US America, but it wasn't the original Dick Gently. That's all my point was. Not a complaint about adaptations.
If I just one little deep dive, really apologies if this is a bit of an obscure deep dive for the Americans.
No, go for it.
But there was this animated adaptation of Alexandre Dumas' Three Musketeers, except it was all anthropomorphic animals. It was called D'Artagnan and the Three
Musketeers.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, weep shit.
Hounds. Are you sure you're not confusing it with Albert the Fifth Musketeer, which was a separate?
No, I'm definitely remembering being a kid and watching D'Artagnan. It was awesome.
But it had this wonderful little disclaimer. I think it was at the beginning, and it basically said, "Okay, this is not a 1-for-1 retelling of the Three Musketeers, but we hope that we've
done it fair."
Distilled the spirit of the book and all the key themes within it, which they did. And the same animation studio, absolutely, Cliff, Justice for Timber. Sorry, bit of an in-joke. And they actually, the same animation studio did an adaptations of Jules Verne, again with anthropomorphic animals, Around the World with Willy Fogg, which is another.
I remember that one as well.
Yeah,
classic.
I remember that.
And the theme tunes. Oh God, the theme tunes. I can still sing them even now.
Mr. Sheep, away from our reminiscence of being 12.
I was going to say, these are obviously very British things because I've never heard of any of these. So they've probably never made it over here. So somebody made a comment that I want to touch on, which is something I was kind of considering anyway. And it was when them saying that, when somebody takes something you love and then totally takes bits out and changes it. I completely understand that. I said, as such a prolific reader, I understand that when I watch something and I'm expecting a certain thing to be there or a certain feeling to be there, and it's not, it's kind of upsetting. But it kind of goes back to what Raggedy said, is that you cannot, unless you have a stupid budget and a lot of time and you're willing to spread things out, cannot make true, faithful reproductions of books into movies or TV shows unless you spend a amount of time. It's because trying to do it exactly is practically impossible. The other thing is now this is something I apparently discovered that not everybody can do. When I read a book, I see everything in detail in my head. Not everybody can do that. Not everybody can visualize like that. But so for me, I'm basically creating a movie when I create a book. When I read a book, I have my version of everything in my head, and then I watch something, and it's not the same thing. Yes, it becomes disjointed, but that's why I spent so much time making myself understand that they are separate, because the version that's in my head is not the version that the author wrote. They imagined everything differently, and when somebody makes another version of that, they're imagining it completely differently too. So it's. I feel for that thought of somebody's taking something out of something that you love, but you're doing that to what the author wrote too. And so when somebody else does it to make something, it's the same thing. You just have to love the version that exists for you in your head, in your memory, and understand that it is not the version that that was in the author's head, and it's not this other version, and that version in your head does not get affected because somebody else has a different version.
And also, just on pure mediums, using Watchmen as an example, the way the comic was structured, the breakdown of the individual panels, the bookends within issues, a number of visual jokes and things. You couldn't do that in a film because it's not a comic page.
Yep.
As an example, there is such thing as a god awful version.
Yes.
Not going to lie, some versions of movies are, of books or whatever, are just absolute trash.
Aragon.
But the most accurate version will still be wrong because of the medium switch. So as long as someone gives it a fair try.
See, that was going to be my point. Whereas, so you were saying like, oh, you can't do a good version. So Fight Club, for instance, the movie was almost, so I read the book before I saw the movie, and that was almost exactly what I wanted from the movie. Like it sort of read page for page or scene for scene. Same with Hellboy.
The Guillermo version,
yeah, the first Hellboy film. That was that. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that was very, very similar to the first book.
Fight Club is an interesting example because the writer said that the movie was the better version and the better story. So it's an interesting one to bring up, but on that front.
But going back now, whenever not that I read it that regularly, but when I have read it in subsequent readings, like I always now see Angel Face as Jared Leto. I see Meatloaf as Meatloaf, or I can't remember what character he plays, but like I see all of those characters as the characters from the film. So
yeah, no, I'm not saying. Oh, okay, again, I'm not saying it can't get very close. I'm saying there's always going to be flaws in it because of the medium shift.
Absolutely,
yeah.
So
anyway,
two things. One, what Raggedy said about running that way about Chuck Palahniuk saying that the movie version was better than the book version. So I've met him and I talked to him at a bookstore in Portland, and yeah, I got the same kind of story. Like, that the topic of the movie came up and he's like, yeah, I really like, I like the way that it ended up. I like the way that it was presented better than what I wrote. And a tangent to that is the movie The Mist was very different than the book written by Stephen King. Stephen King flat out admits that the ending in the movie is better than his ending in his book, and he wishes he written it that way.
The ending in the movie is brutal.
Yes,
it is.
He admits that he loves that way more than what he wrote, and he wishes he'd written it that way. But on to side that, like what Lewie was saying is like reading the Harry Potter books after seeing the movies, I see the characters from the movies now instead of the characters that I imagined originally. That is absolutely true. And for some people, that is going to be a detriment to the book if they come back to it later, after having seen some other version of it. It can affect it. Yes, I will admit that is a potential, though I don't know if that's always the case. Also, Louis, if you have not read it, Rant by Chuck Palahniuk, that book is mess with your head.
So I got as far as a part in Haunted and Hunted. Whichever. I got as far as a part in one of his books, and I was like, nope. That's enough for me. And I'm sure anyone who has read that far in Haunted will appreciate where I'm coming from. And that was, me done.
Yeah, if you ever them, Grant is going to recommend.
I feel like we sort of moved away from
Pratchett. Yeah,
Mr. Pratchett.
Yeah.
But
happened.
back to what Misha was originally saying, like, Pratchett is like, he's had this influence, and I've heard so many stories about his books from people I know that have read them and that love them and have told me that I need to read them. And like I've never seen Hogfather, but I've seen like the post, the like movie cover, and like the color magic and stuff. I've never seen any of the things based off of his work. I've listened to a radio play version of Good Omens that had him and Neil Gaiman in it. Like I said, I've listened to the audiobook of it. I've read the book.
Have you seen the series?
The TV series?
Yeah, Good Omens.
No, I watched I think the first episode or two, and then I didn't finish it. I need to
absolutely recommend you should.
Before we move on to the next block, I got one question for you too, which is not meant as an attack or anything. It's a straight up question.
I'm absolutely going to take it as an attack. But
okay, fine. This is personally offensive towards you. It's very straightforward. Why haven't you read Pratchett at this point? You're aware of the guy's presence and all that stuff. What is it that stopped you from reading it?
Spite.
Okay, fair enough. Spite, I can live with.
So my brother grew up reading Terry Pratchett, and like he had shelves of his books, and I was like, oh no, I'm not going to read that nerd shit. And then I've literally just never bothered, other than all the TV stuff that I've seen and Good Omens that I read and listened to and watched. But But I mean, I've got a number of Pratchett books that a friend of mine has sent to me because he was like, these are the books that you need to read, so please read them. And I was like, okay, cool. And he sent them to me, and they've sat on my bookshelf ever since.
Fair enough.
I will get around to reading them at some point.
Mr. the Sheep?
So it's not spite. Really, the simple answer is how do I word this? Time and financial investment.
Financial investment.
Yeah, so I have nothing against, like I said, I want to read them, but like Discworld alone is, as you said, 40 books. That's a lot of time, and that's a lot of money to get all of those, especially since I have switched away from physical books now and only read things digitally. That's kind of how I read so much. Plus, I read really fast. So the idea of taking the time to buy and read 40 books is, especially as an unemployed student right now on a very limited budget, is a significant investment.
You do know you can buy them individually, right? You don't have to buy them all in one go.
Yes,
and
but
you can easily skip the first few. You can easily skip certainly the first couple.
I like them.
But yeah, for me,
they're not as good. They're objectively not as good.
It was always just the time investment. Like, it just, as the years progressed and more stuff was added to his books, like, and just to his universe in general and all of his different series, like, it just became more and more daunting to think, okay, now I get to start reading a 40-book series. Like, even I mentioned Piers Anthony before, like, I've never read all of his books. There's some series that I very highly recommend that are short, some that I don't really recommend. But yeah, like, just the investment in doing all of that. Like, I want to do it eventually, and I need to do it. But I am not selling my 3080. I would sell you first. Yes, libraries have Pratchett, but as I said, I have moved away from physical books. Ebooks in libraries, I don't.
I mean, I was just going to say, sell your 3080, wait 6 months, and then buy two 3080s, and probably the whole of Pratchett. I think
Yeah.
that's I think going to Misha's
Bitcoin.
initial premise, the fact that you're worried about reading one book and then buying 40 others kind of says the prominence you reckon, the quality of this writing. I think that's a pretty solid legacy for someone to have.
Oh yeah,
Does that sound reasonable?
And that's exactly it. Like, I have zero doubt I will enjoy his books. I have zero doubt I will, that I will, devour them like somebody who's starving. It's just the time and financial investment to get started that really has been the daunting thing for me.
Lewie and then Mish.
Absolutely agree. So last year I started in the Warhammer 40k universe, and that's a similar thing. There are like hundreds of books, and it's just one of those things where you're like, where do I start? Like, do I start at the beginning? Do I start like with a chosen thing? Like, I sort of get where you're coming from, because there's so much to read that where do you start? And yeah, ultimately it sort of becomes a financial burden.
I mean, and that's and I want to add one thing, and then I will shut up and let Misha talk, because I know he say something. With the positive with Pratchett's work is, like, Discworld is consistent. You know what order to read them in. With like the Warhammer stuff, or like Star Wars or the Star Trek universe, or other ones that have large amounts of books, is they're all written by different people. They have different continuities. They're in different places. Like, you don't have a consistency. And yes, like, I'm super interested in the lore of the Warhammer 40k universe. Never played the game, never had an interest to, but I want to learn about the universe. And it's the same issue for me, is I don't know where to start. With Pratchett, at least I know where to start, but it's still like 40 books is a lot of books. Yes, that for me, that's like at 1 to 2 books, about a book every 2 days, and 40 books, that's what, like 80 something days, we'll go, 90 just for,
Okay.
So
he needed to pee again, so we get, because he's doing the next topic. So until he's back, do you want to do the wrap up?
Okay. Well, one aside, you don't have to buy all the books. Whether you would or not is another matter, but you don't, in principle, at least, you don't have to. Just pick a few. Space Marines go burr, Chaos bad. There's a wonderful, there's a like 2 minute summary of the entire Horus Heresy done in by Total Biscuit, I think, was it? I don't know who it was.
Yeah.
But okay, going back, no. Anyway, the point. Yeah. But the thing to say about Pratchett is that, it's like you can find something within Pratchett that will get. Not everything in Pratchett is necessarily going to grab you. Just so find one of the books that has something you quite like the sound of, whether that's police procedurals with subtle social commentary, or whether you want out and out powerful, out and out feminist feminist prose, then you read The Witches. If you want metaphysics, you can have The Wizards or Death, or sometimes both. There are lots of resources out there willing to tell you, which bits of Pratchett you might most like to get started with. And I guess the only thing I will say is that, just to close, I have a little theory. Some people say that the world went into the darkest timeline when Barry died. I disagree. I think that the world as we know it, the entirety of reality, this round world that we live in, was being propelled by unstable narrativium, which is the element in the Discworld. It's the element of stories. It's the meta narrative that undergirds everything. it's what means that if you're the third son of somebody and your two brothers have both failed at the same quest, then you're
gonna
guaranteed
get
to
it.
succeed. My theory is that it was actually Sir Terry who was marshalling the narrativium. He was basically telling the story of the world and stopping it from going awry. Now, when he died, the narrativium went haywire and started looking for a new writer to glom onto. Now, of course, at the time, Game of Thrones was really big. So the narrativium glommed onto George R.R. Martin, which is how we got 2016, aka the year politics went to shit and everybody died. And we've basically been the entire narrative of how a reality is unglued, and everybody's scrabbling to try and make sense of it because we don't have this great storyteller sitting at the center of the cosmos going, no, let's just do it like this, shall we?
That's definitely
At
a
least he
theory
didn't make
to
himself
have.
a god like Stephen King did.
Yeah. My own theory is that it all went. My own theory is it all kind of went to shit when Lemmy died, but that's me. Anyway,
Lemmy wasn't the cause of it. Lemmy knew what was coming. Lemmy precognitively using his demigod powers, his ancient elvish Tolkien elf style rock and roll powers to see what was coming, and he chose to die. He could have lived on if he wanted to because he's functionally immortal, but he chose to die because he didn't want to live through 2016.
Now I can't help but think about. Sorry, I was going to say now I can't help but think about Lemmy in the Tolkien verse.
That would be brutal. Anyway, time is pressing. We have to move on to our next topic. And that will be Mr. Lewie, who will be guiding us through what will be our second edition of this one. Ready to start when you are.
Oh, okay. So the short version is obviously back in September, October time.
Yeah.
It was announced that Microsoft are going to buy ZeniMax, and then at the start of this month, the deal was finalized
and approved and allowed.
Yep. And it sort of came out that a lot of the Bethesda games that were going to be what's the way to put this? So essentially they've said that a lot of games that haven't already agreed a license are now going to be exclusive. So essentially I think they said any platform that has Game Pass will get the games.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the gist of it. Like the main point for me is whether the exclusivity will be a benefit to Microsoft or whether it'll be a hindrance.
Forgive me if I'm wrong. When they originally announced it, they said they were going to try and keep it as multi-platform as possible, correct?
Well, they originally said it was going to be on a case-by-case basis, which was...
people were quite positive about.
Yeah. And then when they announced it, it was any platform that... I can't remember what the exact quote was, but it was any platform that supports Game Pass will have access to those games, which sort of leaves it a bit open-ended.
And presumably others won't.
I think they will, but like either at a premium or with a timed exclusive. So Sheep has something to say.
Yes. So I have two perspectives on this. One from a consumer side, and then one from somebody with insight into the development side.
Mhm.
So
Oh,
from the
yes.
consumer side, it's if it is in fact true that, with the exception of games that are already in development that already have agreements to be multi-platform, future games made by the studios under the Microsoft umbrella from ZeniMax are Xbox exclusive or Microsoft environment exclusive. Either entirely exclusive or timed exclusive. Premium exclusive, I don't think will ever exist like that. But timed exclusive or premium or entirely exclusive would be Microsoft shooting themselves in the foot. Absolutely.
Absolutely.
From a consumer's perspective. From a development perspective, as somebody who, like I said, is studying game design, is very, is regularly in contact with people in the development world, both in independent and AAA development. Again, Microsoft would be shooting themselves in the foot, but in a different way. So from a consumer perspective, Microsoft would be seriously alienating consumer bases, because, you have to think about the fact that, yes, the Xbox does really well in the US, and in parts of Europe and other parts of the world, but primarily North America is the Xbox market, for stuff like that. PC gaming is all over. That's beside the point. And Game Pass, the thing is that not everything on Game Pass for console is on PC, which is an unfortunate thing for me, especially somebody who doesn't have a console currently. I do have an Xbox One X in a storage unit, but I don't have access to it right now because it's buried. So it's a long story, but it would be a detriment to the company from a consumer side to lose out on all that money, because if they don't offer them on other platforms like the Switch or the PlayStation environment, they're losing out on a significant number of people. Like in Asia, PlayStation has the lockdown hardcore. Japan, in China and Thailand, like that area of the world, PlayStation is the console. Some people may have Xboxes, gaming PCs. Again, it can vary, but that is the primary console. So taking away all of that revenue would be insane for them. Timed exclusives, again, it's not something I would suggest, but they might do it just to give themselves some influx on the development side. Again, that's not alienating customers. That's alienating other, development companies. Is building their infrastructure. They're building their umbrella, buying up studios and stuff like that. But there are a lot of companies that are going to not necessarily want to develop for Xbox environment if Microsoft says, "Hey, your stuff has to be exclusive to us," or just do it in protest, like, "Hey, you're kind of screwing the industry by buying up a major company and saying their stuff is only on our stuff."
Yeah, I can see the second thing happening. The first thing, not so much. But yeah, go for it.
But in theory, does developing? I don't know how it is these days. With does developing for only one platform, is that easier?
Yes.
Or is there enough? I didn't know whether the engines being used were similar enough across different platforms. I'm out of the loop on this. So.
It's not. From my experience within the AAA industry, it's not that it's easier. It's just that it's a bit less hard, if you get what I mean. It is perfectly possible to develop on two platforms at the same time. It just is more. It is more time and more money and more complications, but it's not a nightmare.
But yeah, exactly. And you're doubling stuff like QA. Like you have to quality test on two platforms.
Yeah.
You have
but you're not doubling the cost. You are doubling the market, though. each time you do it.
Well,
if that makes sense.
not necessarily. So what Louis is trying to say is, so to the question of, is it easier to develop for a single platform? Yes and no. So depending on which engine you're using, so Unreal Engine will go off that. That's the one I'm most familiar with. You can develop an Unreal Engine without defining the specific platform you're building for. And then when you package and build it, you can select which platforms you're building for. And, you know, and so it doesn't necessarily make things easier to develop for one, but it reduces potential issues with developing for a single one versus multiple ones. Consoles are easier because they have specific hardware. You know what they're capable of. It's easy.
Yeah.
PC is a whole different world because you have such a broad range. But at the same time, like Louis said, you do have to do QA of two different environments: online environments, offline environments. You know, at different systems and and different TVs and stuff like that. So yes, you are going to spend more money on your QA by developing for multiple consoles or systems at the same time. But as Raggedy said, you are also increasing your player base and your revenue by spreading it out. So that's why, like, exclusives can be a good thing and they can be a bad thing if it's on the studio's end. They decide to do it because that's what's going to work for them. It's when a console developer says, we only want stuff for us and nobody else, that's when issues arise.
So a prime example of that will be No Man's Sky. So Sony, for instance, pushed for a certain development of, or a certain build of No Man's Sky. And when it came out, it was absolutely nothing like what
had been promised.
Well, yeah, exactly.
What the intention was.
Well, yeah, quite. But having come out on multiple platforms now, you can see how much the game has progressed. And like, I've played it on Xbox One, and it's a brilliant game. I mean, it's not for me, but it's a brilliant game. So you can see how the exclusivity to the Sony environment kind of hindered it to a degree.
It's also exclusivity gives a lot of control to the to effectively what becomes your publisher, Microsoft or Sony. It gives they get a lot more control, because if they're saying you want to get on our network, you want to get on our game, you've got to be exclusive. They will then be able to put more criteria on you because you've signed up to them and you're locked in. It's a tricky one. But then again, Microsoft paid something like, what was it?
7.2 billion.
7.2 billion
or something. But yeah, it's stupid amount of money.
They paid an absolute fortune of money, and this disappoints me, but it doesn't surprise me, because Bethesda is a very large, it's got a lot of games. Sorry, it's got a lot of games under its wings. So with these
20, I think it's 20 something studios they've got.
Yeah,
ZeniMax.
Because
ZeniMax has 20 something studios,
and then Bethesda's got how many under it's on that. That we're basically talking about, if they go exclusive, that gives them a hell of a lot of pull, because when you're talking about the markets as an expansion tool, exclusives are great, especially if you're taking exclusives away from other platforms. Because if you've got a whole bunch of people who are used to playing Game X on the game box, and then suddenly it's only available on the PlayTube, then they're going to go and get the PlayTube. It doesn't matter. The theory is they're going to go and do that. So this is essentially it's a predatory practice.
Yeah.
So I actually agree and disagree with that statement.
Oh,
so,
excellent.
Not the predatory practice. The predatory practice I agree with. But the idea that players who spent a lot of time playing a specific game on a specific console, and that game is no longer offered on that console, is offered on another console, there will be people who will switch to that other console for that game. They will probably purchase another console, use it for that other game, and then maybe not use it again or use it for
Skyrim 6 will be a prime example.
But there will also be a number of people who will then just say, no, I refuse to go with this tactic. I refuse to participate in this. I will not play that game because of this. But if you look at the inverse of that and look at Final Fantasy, it was Sony specific, and then they opened it up to everybody else. It only brought more people in instead of less.
It is a gamble, but very smart people would have done a lot of research and done a lot of maths, and they're going to be thinking that it will come in their favor. Sorry, go for it.
So the people. The thing is, traditionally, I don't know if this is still true, but traditionally the consoles are sold at a loss, and you make your money back on the games.
Yes.
So if somebody's buying a console for only one game,
you don't make money.
Then, maybe it would be different if you were buying your Game Pass and getting all of the games. Maybe,
we're talking about the purchase of a studio, though. Not a game. But from the exclusives perspective, if somebody buys an entire console just for one game, then is that really getting? It's getting you bigger numbers. If the maths.
It's getting you bigger numbers on your installed user base, but how much money are you actually making off those
if the numbers
users
work? We're talking about a conglomerate of 20 or so studios, each studio having like at least 2 or 3 headline titles and headline series. So if the numbers work, I could believe the numbers will work.
I mean, the thing is like, no one is going to buy an Xbox just for Skyrim 6. They're not going to buy the new Xbox just for the new Wolfenstein. I think the thing that they will have obviously taken into account is that these are already established franchises. So the new Skyrim game, for instance, I will almost guarantee that will be available on every platform that will support it, because it has a dedicated fan base of people who will be willing to they'll be willing to buy a console for it, and they'll be willing to buy Game Pass for 12 months for it. But they'll also be willing to wait 12 months for it to come out on their desired platform, or however long.
Something you mentioned there, I think, is one of the big selling features is to how Microsoft could potentially get away with this. So yes, mainline existing IPs likely will not be exclusive. Microsoft would be suicide to do that, because the idea that we're going to make people buy our stuff just to play a series that they've played previously is going to turn a lot of people off. But new IPs is a different story. New IPs doesn't already have an existing fan base and may bring in new people. But how they get around people buying consoles, and yes, as Misha said, they do take a loss on the hardware of the console. Yes, they try to minimize that, but their idea is that the additional services is what makes up that money. But Microsoft did the smart thing and made Game Pass. Game Pass is absolutely a fantastic idea and gives a lot of people opportunities to access games they wouldn't normally. So if Microsoft only did it with new IPs and offered it on Game Pass and did timed exclusives or even entirely exclusives, Microsoft wins in the end in that case. They don't get people buying consoles exclusively for a specific game, and they don't shoot themselves in the foot by saying this existing IPs only exists on our ecosystem going forward. But they say this new IP from this same company, you can play it on our systems, and you don't have to buy it individually. You buy Game Pass, which doesn't cost them anything. In fact, they make stupid amounts of money off of it. They win in the end that way, and they have all of these existing customers and these existing IPs.
I think
platform, and they're making money hand over fist.
I think. Sorry, go on.
Yeah, you've also got the long-term element of this. This is a product this is something that will be purchased to make money over 5, 10, 15 years. It won't be something they're looking to make money off now. So even if they do a limited exclusive where they go, right, it's going to be on this platform for 3 or 6 months, if they've looked at the numbers and they've seen that will give them a sufficient edge to get enough people when the next round of consoles comes around, that they get enough people going, well, I've been playing this and I want to, I'm going to jump for that because then I'll get that game sooner. You're looking at long-term cycles. I mean,
and if you keep your Game Pass, so you don't have to sign up for any more. You don't have to buy.
It's a very complicated thing. I mean,
especially with
the money's involved and the people involved. It is very, very. The maths of it will pay out. Sorry, you're going to say.
I mean, especially with like the Xbox All Access, like you pay for your Game Pass and for your console for the next, I think it's 2 years, over a monthly fee.
Yeah.
So like that's pretty much tied a consumer into that infrastructure for 2 years.
Mm.
So when the next console comes out, like they're then going to go, oh well, I spent 2 years on this platform. So from my perspective, like that would have tied me into a console for 2 years. Well, why wouldn't I stick with them for another 2 years or 4 years or 10 years, however long?
It's the sunk cost fallacy. It's the idea that I've spent this much time and effort in something that I have to continue with it. It's why people like me still play WoW all these years, even though we don't necessarily as much time and effort into it as we used to, because we've spent so much time doing it. He's right. Like, it's the same thing with like in the US. I don't know how it is elsewhere. In the US, like if you sign up for a cell phone, you have 2 options. You buy it outright, or you pay a monthly fee along with your service fee for your service, and you're paying off the phone over time, so that by the time your contract, even though contracts really don't exist as much anymore, you're already invested in that environment, in that ecosystem. It's easier just to continue on and just do another one, and then do another one, and next you've been with that same company for 10 years because you're already invested. It's the same with a game system. Like, people who buy Xboxes are likely to buy another Xbox than a PlayStation.
It's also cars.
Yeah.
This is a bizarre. This is an example someone pointed out to me. A lot of people have very strong opinions about the car they drive, and most people have only ever driven about like 3 or 4 other car, like the 3 or 4 other style of car, but they're so used to it, they have so much time. They go, right, I like this style of car, even though there is no way they could make any kind of sensible comparison to other things. This is not. Some of it is because you go, it does what I need it to do, and some of it is people just very much get attached to it and go, no, I am this kind of car person. They're great. It's like, well, of the 400 other cars that are like that, how many others have you driven? Oh, none. But this one's great.
It's the familiarity. They get used to something, and they have a certain expectation and comfort level with it.
Yeah.
When it's time to get a new car or something, like for me, like I've owned 3 Subarus. I've also owned a bunch of other types of cars. I love my Subarus. Like if I get another car, it will either be a Tesla or another Subaru. And I am exactly like that. Like I've driven a bunch of other cars, but I like this one. I'm comfortable with them. I'm familiar with them. All of that, and it's the same thing.
By a bunch of other cars, you probably haven't even done like 5% of the options.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I'm not saying you haven't done a bunch of other cars.
Absolutely right. Yes.
But the thing is, will you wait for another Subaru or another Tesla, or will you go, oh, actually, do you know what? I won't wait until whatever the next version will be, or the next version will be. Or will I go all in on the next version?
I'm quickly going to make a response to Mr. Mark. But then who has the opportunity to drive enough cars in depth to form a balanced opinion? Exactly my point. How many people have the opportunity to play enough platforms in depth to form a balanced opinion? A lot of people stick with stuff because they like it,
and because they have friends there, they're invested in these.
Yeah,
yes.
I'm not sure that's a.
It's a comparable.
I'm not sure that is necessarily comparable because you've got what, four or five gaming platforms,
but each one of those is a £500 to £700 investment minimum.
Yeah.
That's we are. I appreciate that. Number one, at least three of us here are seriously into computers, and it is a major investment. It is this is like a car person will have done that. A lot of people, no, they played Xbox. It was good enough for them, and then they carry on playing Xbox because it's their jam.
Yeah, that's great. Like I have friends who don't game on PC. They only game on console, either PlayStation or Xbox or Switch or whatever. Yeah, I know plenty of people that way, and one thing I will say, and then I will make a comment about the comment that you showed earlier. If you play games for enjoyment, whatever it is, wherever it is, you are a this word has become taboo, gamer. But that's my stance. I don't care if you play on a cell phone or you play on a Switch or you play an original Nintendo Entertainment System. If you play games for enjoyment, that's all that matters. I don't care where you do it or how you do it. I don't care what you play. That's not what matters to me.
I can actually see my original Super Nintendo from here.
Lucky. I had an original NES, the first edition that had the box and everything, perfect edition, until somebody stole it from me that I was letting live with me. But that's beside the point. So you're right. Like there are a lot of people that that are used to playing on console. They're used to playing Nintendo environment or Xbox or PlayStation or whatever, and they're happy there and they have no reason to change. That's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. Also, I will make a comment. There was one name that you forgot from that list. You mentioned the hamster. You mentioned Captain Slow. You forgot the other one. How can you? Yes, Clarkson is an ass, but
no one likes him.
Yes.
Yeah,
you forgot Matt LeBlanc. You forgot Freddie Flintoff. You forgot Paddy Cox.
Stop it. Stop it. Anyway, but yes, and that's exactly it. Like there are some people who are invested in a specific environment or ecosystem that have no interest in changing, and they're content where they are. And at the same time, that could potentially be an issue for Microsoft if they decide to say, like, hey, like the next Fallout game is only going to be on Xbox. Well, then you're guaranteeing that the people who are perfectly content and invested in the Sony ecosystem are not going to switch for that, as much as they might love that series.
I think the kind of key markers will be Starfield and the new Machine Head Indiana Jones games.
Yeah.
I think they'll be the ones that will be, because they're new IPs, that new-ish IPs with indie. But it'll be interesting to see what they do with particularly Indiana Jones, whether they'll make it a platform exclusive or whether they'll go down the route of, hooray, Indiana Jones is for everyone, except for Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, because no one likes that.
It's going to be interesting to see how this play works out in the long run.
Yeah, like I said,
think
my thought is it's going to be timed exclusives for new IPs, and that it has to be new IPs. Anything existing is just it's too much to
maybe we'll find out.
Who knows? Maybe they'll make another decision. It'll be really stupid, and we can laugh at them later.
Hey, them and all their money. Oh,
I mean, but then we're looking.
Yeah.
Sorry, go on.
Yep. And then Louis gets the final comment before we do the wrap up. Misha.
Yeah.
Oh,
sorry. No, I mean,
Misha.
no, because the point I was making is that, I mean, you're quite right, Raggedy, that all of these decisions people will have sat down and run the numbers again, and lots of very highly paid consultants and experts in their field will have done everything about it. But there is you can't predict everything. A fascinating article the other day about what data can't do, and so if they might think they've priced in any backlash they'd get from doing platform exclusives, but have they really? What else? Is there going to be unforeseen circumstances? Is a developer going to say, right, you're shunting us out of this? That you're doing that. This one's going to be, is there going to be a tit for tat? Is Sony going to say, right, this is platform exclusive now, and then it turns out that they've accidentally managed to uncover the next WoW or whatever? There are a lot of imponderables, and we're going to have to see. I mean, Nintendo because they've always had most of their stuff has been platform exclusive, but nobody's ever complained about that. If you want Mario, you buy Nintendo. If you want Zelda, if you want Link and Zelda, you buy Pokemon, you buy Nintendo, and that's
very
different
markets.
Yeah.
I'm almost tempted to make a comment that I'm guaranteed will get the mob to come after me with pitchforks and torches, but
I don't think we've got a mob left viewing us. So because they had a conversation about existentialism and moderate determinism.
Nominative determinism.
Hit up your your view.
So
shields up.
I have a feeling that this is going to rile up Misha. So I am the game that got me started in video games was the original Legend of Zelda on the original NES. That was the game that started it for me and my mom, to give you an idea, when Ocarina of Time, Majora's Mask, and Wind Waker came out, my mom took vacation time to have long weekends to play it. I bought my mom a PS5 for Christmas. My mom is the one that got me into playing games, and it started with Zelda. So the Zelda franchise has always been very important to me and the family.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That being said, I am very disappointed with and not looking forward to a Breath of the Wild sequel. Breath of the Wild to me is one of the least Zelda games in existence. I did not enjoy it. I don't understand the hype behind it. And it is something that I hope
I feel like we're
away from that in the future.
I feel like we're on the same half here because I thought that Breath of the Wild was hugely overrated.
It looked pretty, but it felt like the least Zelda game I've ever played.
I played almost no Zelda, so I can't make a comment.
I'm agnostic.
I'm agnostic
on the point. I don't own a Switch. Yeah.
Okay. So I mean, for me, and I really.
There's a fight brewing.
Funny.
Anyway,
no, it's I could go on about it forever, but yes, I'm that odd one out.
We've hit the 2 hour mark.
The day Nintendo goes gacha and starts you can only get new Pokemon in loot boxes. That will be the day when everything goes down.
We've managed to hit the 2 hour mark, and we haven't got to the mad ass ramble. So good session. Thank you to everyone who has stuck out with us this far. Thank you to the comment section. More fun making it. Redhead Rambles, Just Mark, Nintendo 64 person I
And
saw
64 Live.
floating
And
around.
64 Live podcast, yeah.
Oh, right, cool. Yeah, happy to give a shout out for that. Lurko and Just Mark and the Sheep and Lewie Kong. I recognise those names. Thank you, everyone, for being here. Mr. the Sheep, thank you very much for being with us. Is there anything you would like to plug?
Just my Twitter. It's _ginger sheep, just like my name. Just in Twitch, it has one extra underscore, so it's just the and then
_ ginger sheep.
Yeah, so basically, take out that extra underscore. I just recently got a bunch of equipment set up. I will be returning to streaming, hopefully in the next couple of weeks. I'm also developing a couple of podcasts of my own, which I am hoping to add additional people to. But it is
maybe syndicate on Bunkerzilla.
There we go. But yeah, so just check out Twitter. That's where I spend most of my time. I'm constantly talking to people. I'm pretty much always on it, and that's where I will talk about things going forward.
Woohoo! Multiclass Geek, thank you very much for being with us. Did you enjoy this wonderful? We definitely enjoyed your chair.
Absolute pleasure. Yeah. I'm very pleased. No, this was possibly the best possible way I could have imagined to make my Twitch debut.
Ooh, fantastic.
Yeah.
Do you have? It can only get better from here. Do you have anything you would like to plug?
Yes. Yeah, I'm not a content creator. It's a running joke on one of the Discords I'm on that I'm the only person who's not a content creator on the entire thing. But I would like to plug my wife is a science fiction author. She has a couple of books published by a specialist small press. I best describe them as they're far future space opera gangland thrillers with diverse protagonists and quantum magic.
Sounds awesome. Where can they find that?
If you Elsewhen Press is the name of the publisher, and the author is Zoe Sumra. The books are in the Underside series.
That will be out on the YouTube when this goes up. Miss Lewie Kong, one of our returning champions. How are you feeling about everything? What do you have to plug?
I hate everyone that was here and everything that was said. No, I don't. If
it's consistent with your previous appearances.
You can find me at you can't find me at Lewie_Kong. You can find me at ReadyPlay2 for more video game rambles. We just talk about games and stuff.
Cool.
That's kind of it.
Okay, not a problem. Ready Player 2. And now we come to the Patreon shoutouts, and it's time for me to hit a button and then read a script that Station Controller gave me. So let's see if we can get through this without mashing up everything. Yes, I would like to give a huge monstrous shout out and say a massive thank you to the following golden monsters Patreons. Leoko is great, who's here in the comments, and Harriet Manga Girl, who was here earlier and then did a legger because they did a legger. Thank you for your ongoing support of Bunkerzilla. If you want your own dedicated shout out, join us on Patreon and subscribe to our big or golden monster tier. Yeah. And someone please sponsor Live from the Super Fortress Hardcore Genki, because you get to hear me mash up your name every month. What more could you want from life? Starting in April, there will be a change to this show. With the Big Stomp, we'll be taking a fourth topic suggested by the Patreons over at Patreon. Share your ideas and topics you'd like me and the panel to discuss. Head over to patreon.com/Bunkerzilla and sign up for as little as £3. It helps cover all the costs of all the toys we bought to do this and be amazing with. You'll get your name in the fabled Hall of Monsters and be in line for some exclusive content in the coming months. And we'll love you very much. And it helps pay for the website, which houses all the trash and treasure. Okay. This has been the Big Stomp. You have all been wonderful. I hope everyone had a great time. I've already done all the stuff that's happening. Station Control will tell me off for that later. And bye from all of us. Bye.
Bye.